I love that we are getting to see other Force users in the galaxy. We're getting to see how other cultures experience the Force. Witches, these other people have always existed, and now we're getting to see things from their perspective and how they interact with the Force. This show has got me so excited for Star Wars.
Krypton to Alderaan, Krypton to Alderaan, Krypton to Alderaan, Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome everyone to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me is Ruish Goodlooks, your Star Wars song guy.
Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, and we are the podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but it's mostly Star Wars. In this episode, we will be talking about The Acolyte, Episode 3, Destiny. But first, we are still on our road to 1,000 subscribers, and we are getting so very close. Please help us out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like, comment, share. Hey, tell your friends. Hey, you like Star Wars? Come listen to this Star Wars podcast. We are getting so excited to get there. It's really great to see. So help us out if you can. That would be great. We appreciate all of you. Thank you all so much. That's enough of that. Let's punch it. Episode 3, The Acolyte, The High Republic, The Acolyte, Episode 3.
100 years. 100 years in the past.
100 years in the past, and then also 16 years in the past from that. I think we should start off with a quick little vibe check. Let's take our pulse and see where we're at with this. A week since the 2-episode premiere. We discussed that last episode, and we had some ideas. We loved the mystery. We loved some of the Jedi stuff. We're excited to see what happens next. So where are you at after this episode, Royce?
Yeah, after the premiere last week, I was excited. We did our podcast. I was even more excited. I rewatched the episodes again. I edited our podcast. The excitement continued. I read all of our great comments. I watched all of the clickbait YouTube videos, maybe a few, too many to be honest. But it all got me even more excited for this week's episode, which I was super happy with. Man, we got consistent run times for like the first time in any Star Wars series. It's so consistent so far. 44 minutes in this episode is great. And, we got our flashback episode, and it was just the flashback episode. We didn't get any extra A, B, ABC plot, fluff, side quest. We were just in this flashback story, and we got a lot of context, but maybe not all of the context, but it was still really a solid contained plot within this episode. Also reminded me a lot of our forlorn love, The Bad Batch. We're on this remote world that's kind of a sanctuary with these, indigenous people, the children that don't have other children to play with. Saw so many parallels with Omega. That's a tangent for another day, maybe, or maybe for later in this pod. All that said, I enjoyed the episode. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I am very much in the same boat. I really loved the flashback. I really loved the way that they did this, that they led us through those first 2 episodes with some of the mystery, with okay, why is May hunting down these Jedi? What did they do? And then we get that. We get the flashback to the younger versions of Sol and Indara and Trobin and Kelnacca. And we kind of see a little bit of what went down here, which I thought was just a really great way to tell the story. I knew that we were going to have flashback episodes. We saw some flashback scenes in the trailer. There was a lot of this set up in the first 2 episodes, but it was great, like you're saying, to have the whole episode dedicated to it. We didn't start with them and then jump back. It was just straight from the gate, 16 years earlier, Brendok, and we got the whole contained, this part of the flashback contained in that one story, which, yeah, I really loved it. Like we have been saying we were hoping for, this episode might have been the most emotional episode of live action Star Wars television that I've ever seen, at least from my point of view. We got the long, lingering, emotional moments. They gave us so much space in the scenes so we could actually be there and be present when the characters were feeling things. There was a lot of stuff to be felt. Super emotional episode. I really loved the witches. I kind of knew that I would feel this way about these characters because I also really like the witches of Dathomir, and there's definitely parallels here. But I really loved the way they talked about the Force and the way they use the Force, even though Aniseya, Mother Aniseya says, some people use it for their own means and they're essentially maybe being more respectful, or they think they're being more respectful. It's a little bit unclear at this moment. We are getting to see other Force users in the galaxy. We're getting to see how other cultures experience the Force, how they see the Force. With this Coven of Witches, they see it as a thread that's binding all, but it leads into different things. You can pull, the Force is not in control of your destiny, you still get to make a choice, but it is a thread that you would need to pull on and travel down that path. I love that framing. We're expanding what we're learning about the Star Wars galaxy as the audience. We're expanding what the Jedi learn about the other cultures in the galaxy and how they interact with the Force. And above all, I really love how very Star Wars this episode was. Like, we talk about going outside of the Star Wars box, which I think that this episode did, but it was also within the Star Wars box. It kind of existed within the box and outside of the box all at once. For someone who wanted something new, for someone who is open to something new, it's new, it hits on that for sure. But for someone who wanted classic Star Wars, it super is classic Star Wars as well. I mean, just look at Mother Aniseya and Shmi. They're essentially very much similar characters and even say almost the same line of dialogue to their children about like making their own decisions and going out in the galaxy to train with the Jedi. So I really loved how new it was and how old it was.
Yeah, well, what makes it classic is the relatable story about this, like, I have a dream and I want to fulfill that, and someone is maybe stopping me from that, but I'm going to persevere through it. Dude, Osha has such a hard life to be in this Coven of Witches, and it's like, you're going to join us and you're going to go through the ceremony. Everyone's watching you. You have one really like loving and caring mother, and then you have the other that's, I expect more from you. Man, I almost could like see myself a little bit in this scenario she finds herself in, with like, you got to find your own place in this world. And that's, that's Rey, that's Luke, that's Anakin, it's everybody, all of the, heroes throughout Star Wars. And you know what? That's literally the people watching as well. You're supposed to see yourself within these characters, and to live up to your parents' expectations. That's always tough. Who can't relate to that on the emotional level? And then to be bold enough to say, no, I don't want to follow that path. I want to follow my own path. To have a parent that supports that, and then to have a sibling that doesn't, that goes as far as to say, I'll kill you because of those that you want to go against our family. No, of course, you want to be a witch. You don't know what you want, and to be living in this, like, man, that's oppressive. We were talking about how maybe the Jedi are the bad guys. You said we'd be on May's side after all of this, Joey. I got to kick it back to you because I could go on and on because I love so much of this episode. But dude, you said like maybe we're going to root for May. May's a little off the deep end here. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, they're 8. I think there's something to be said here to where they're children. The point is made that Osha is old enough to know what she wants, which is fair. But I think it's also confusing. It's confusing to everybody. The situation is confusing.
Just needs to be a boy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, give them space to live as kids. Give Luke space to be just a boy on Tatooine. Give these girls space to be whoever they want to be, which is fair. But like for May, it's confusing. Like she says, everything I want, I have here, or whatever that exact line is. She's like so confused about why anyone, especially her sister, her twin sister, would want anything different. Everything they have is there. Their family is there. Why would you want to leave?
Dude, that line hits so hard for me. Don't you want to see the galaxy? No, why not? Because everything I need is here. Ah!
Yeah, you're right. It's so relatable from so many different perspectives, right? And we're getting like different sides from these two siblings, but each side is extremely relatable. We know people who that is how they feel. Why would they ever want to go anywhere? Everything they have is there. But then there are other people who like want to go out and experience things. And both sides might not necessarily understand each other. And it might not mean that both side is right or wrong. But the danger is that when it becomes like that, when May is confused and might not have enough of a support system or enough of someone like trying to lead her to understanding her sister. And so then she like does an extreme thing that she also might not completely understand to keep things the way they are because she's afraid. You know, it's interesting that we're talking about this because I'm thinking Aniseya says to Osha, fear cannot make this decision, you have to. But then we see it come out from May that fear has 100% influenced May's decision to lock her sister in that room, to say that she'd kill her, to keep her there, and then to set that fire. I don't think the fire was quite as bad as we were made to believe. I've got some maybe left field theories about that. But yeah, maybe that is the beginning of the downfall. Maybe that is what starts to call out to the Sith, that one moment of a completely fearful decision. So I still don't think May is entirely to blame. I do think we're going to see more throughout the season of like, maybe these Jedi weren't the best people, and that's why Trobin took the Barash vow and went away hiding. And that's why Indara was scared when she saw May, because now we know that Indara knew it was May from the marking on May's forehead when they meet. So there's a lot there. It's still not black and white. It's still so like nuanced. And I still don't believe that we will necessarily have a good guy here besides Saul.
Yeah, you're trying to get out of this conversation, but dude, I will kill you. You're not getting out of here. I think you're right though. She's got a lot of fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. You know, it's classic Star Wars, you might say. That's a really spooky scene when the Jedi come in and they're meeting the Coven. They're interrupting like their ritual. Like, man, you got bad timing there, Jedi. A little bit earlier, or like, there's something even more interesting there. Like, had they gone through this ritual, had they both had those, cosmic tattoos put onto them, would the Jedi leave it alone at that sort of thing? Like, would that change anything? But that scene, the music is light. Mother Aniseya is saying no violence. And, Saul takes out his lightsaber and Indara's like, woo, you're going to escalate this. That scene could have gone horribly for the Jedi. And obviously it still does to some degree. We don't know exactly how, but he hands over the lightsaber to Osha. And it's like, you could join us. You would make a great Jedi. So it's so endearing, his character. But I did get kind of like, I'll jump on your side of the fence for a moment. Like, that's Luke and Grogu. Do you want to come to the Jedi and, you get a lightsaber? Pretty cool, right? She already believed the Jedi were good. She already had some inclination that she wanted to join them. But that's a little bit, hey, come over. We've got, there's benefits to being a Jedi. I don't know if that was maybe like a little bit of a trick. Later on, the witches say, like, they use their Jedi mind trick on you. Like, is that part of sometimes bringing in these children, like tricking them into it? I don't think that's really where Saul is. He just wanted to connect. I'm not here to attack you with this. This is like the same thing with Obi-Wan and Luke. This is a Jedi's weapon, the guardians of peace and justice throughout the galaxy. I think that was maybe more of what he was putting forth there, but you could argue it a couple different ways. But he connects with her and, soul, light, like she sees that and she wants to go with them.
It's interesting that we're flip-flopping sides here because I'm no fan of the Jedi, apparently from this era onward. But I did not take it as like the Luke Grogu thing at all. Luke, in the book of Boba Fett, when Luke gives Grogu that choice, it's very
black or white.
Yeah, only a Sith deals in absolutes, Luke. And Luke's intentions are very clear. Luke did a lot of stuff in that episode that was like, did not ask Grogu for his input or for his choice. It was just much less love feeling with Luke and Grogu. With this, the minute Saul kneels down to Osha, I can feel his emotion. You could see it in his face. I mean, the guy's an incredible actor. You can see it. And from what I've read of like his character bio, which I think I said last week, is that like he's an emotional Jedi and uses the Force to keep all of that in check. And I could feel that in those moments. He takes off his lightsaber and hands it to Osha, but she had just said in the crowd, look at the way they wear their sabers. My read was that he felt her admiration. He felt her draw or her interest in it. And so he was making a connection with another human. And it's a cool looking saber. It's like a very minimalist hilt, but I really love the way it looked. I also think like he does say the line of the Jedi don't take kids, which, I have talked about in the past and might have said that that's not necessarily true, but they do give the option they do give the parent a choice. They do give the kid a choice. It's not like they're just snatching them up and taking them away in the dead of the night. You know, in Tales, the whole community realizes that Ahsoka is a Jedi, and they are very open to that being her path. What irked me the most, or what puts me most on my side of the line of these Jedi, this era Jedi already having fallen, is Indara's conversation. She's the one that just seems to be very like maybe lawful, if we're putting it in those terms. And she says the words like, "We are concerned that you are training children," which is not something we've really understood as of yet in Star Wars, but the implication being that no one but the Jedi is allowed to train kids in the ways of the Force. Like, I'm sure that if that is a law, I'm sure that there is a reason for that law, but it's not good. That's not a good way to do things. It just leads me to not trust exactly why Indara says they were there. I was much more on Mother Aniseya's side when she says the line of like, "Oh, the all-knowing Jedi didn't know that Brendok was inhabited by people." I find that hard to believe, whatever that actual line is. But something along those lines, it makes me trust her less. I think Saul is very emotional and establishes these emotional connections and seems trustworthy. Indara's the one who is saying things, spewing Republic legislature to these people who aren't even within the Republic. So there's some weird stuff going on there. And in a couple of scenes earlier, they were talking about stuff within the Coven space, and Mother Koril hears a noise, and they send the girls to their room, and she goes to investigate. And so maybe the implication there is that the Jedi were there and spying on them to some degree.
Well, they've got like some room with like a device that like, is that a weapon to blow up planets? You know, who knows what's going on there? They had some kind of like technology that looked like it was maybe sabotaged. I don't know.
Yeah, I assumed that was like a power, like a generator thing in there. But then the assumption after that was that did the Jedi sabotage that area and end up causing the explosion that we see at the end that probably would not have happened by lighting a sketchbook on fire. The Jedi have blamed May for this fire that then kills all the witches, but we saw the witches dead on the floor, not burned. So, and then stuff starts to blow up, which it's just kind of big stuff happened for one kind of little fire that just got lit. So we see that scene with Mother Koril and that power generator and hearing something in there. And then we like go to the Jedi spaceship and Kelnacca's like working on all this tech stuff, messing around with the speeder bike and fixing these things in the field. And so it did seem a little bit like, oh, did they sabotage part of this, the power generator or part of the building somehow, right? Because it was obvious that the Jedi were out to get these witches in one way or another.
Yeah, I really hope this isn't another bait and switch of like, Qui-Gon says, I didn't actually come here to free slaves. Like, we didn't actually come here to bring your children into the Jedi. We actually came here to further persecute and hunt and suppress your people. Because we're threatened by them because, you know, we justify our galactic dominance by being the only people that can wield the Force. So what you're doing right now, we've got to put an end to it. So that would be kind of a bummer. You would think like they're just looking to find, right, so the ideal Jedi, right? You're looking for other people like you that have the potential for good to further that good in the world. And you want to help foster that, right? We're going to adopt these children and let them reach their full potential. Not that they couldn't, you know, do something great on their own. Dude, this is so interesting because Osha eventually walks away from the Jedi Order. So she does join, she walks away. And I was going to say, like, you can still do something great on your own. Like, her destiny was not necessarily like being in the Jedi. She left and then she's going to be a mechanic. She's doing what she chooses to do. We need to see what actually happened there, because what are the intentions? Is Soul, like you're saying, is he just there for the good? Are they doing something more nefarious there? We didn't see their side of the story so much in the flashback. I do think it was interesting that we saw the scene where they were testing the children. We didn't see May's test, but we did see Osha's test. I think it's so interesting that she's saying, oh, I see this. Oh, correct. And it's not actually that thing, you know? Oh, I see this. Correct. It's not that. And they catch Osha in a lie only by themselves having lied. And then that same person tells Osha, you have to have the courage to tell the truth. So, and then the piece is a lie. Like, oh, it's so interesting. There's so much to unpack here, man. How are we going to do this in this episode here today? We're obviously going to have to revisit this stuff. The telling the truth, the lying.
It seems like this is what is going to be the through line of the series is what is truth, right? Like in the trailer, no one is safe from the truth,
Ooh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And we're getting these like lie versus truth language, and it just like the superiority and entitlement of the Jedi. We're the only ones that are allowed to train children. What you're doing is wrong. You have to have the courage to tell the truth, even though I, as a Jedi, just lied to you to get something from you.
Well, and Aniseya even says, like, if only it were that simple, in response to Osha saying, I told the truth.
Yeah. There's a lot here that I don't think is necessarily good versus evil. There's just like these different people existing in different ways in the galaxy, and the Jedi thinking that their way is best, and the Jedi thinking that the Republic way is best. And I'm not saying the Jedi shouldn't be doing this stuff if there is actually something evil going on, but these witches, as far as we know, right? We don't know enough. So
Right.
Yes, what you're saying about like having to reflect back on this will be key once we have the whole story, because we don't know why the witches were hiding on Brendok. We don't know what their history was. We don't know if they have like traditionally been villains. And we see what Mother Aniseya can do to Trobin.
Yeah, does that count as violence there?
Yeah, right? Like that's also not good. And there's another mystery there of, okay, what was that? Did it have any lasting effects? Is he traumatized? There's so much there. We're 3 episodes in, but there's so much more to happen.
Yeah. Dude, let me bring this back to Bad Batch for a moment. And sorry if you're listening to our Acolyte podcast and you didn't watch Bad Batch. Spoilers ahead. Light spoilers. When Asajj Ventress shows up and she's, trying to train with Omega, you and I were both like, man, I could go for a whole season of this. Let's explore the like non-force user, training, or like, pseudo force user training. This person that's just genuinely good person training in the force. I wanted so much more of that. I kind of feel that way with the witches here. You said this earlier of like, I just kind of like the witches. I enjoyed like getting to know their world, and especially that this episode didn't bounce back and forth. We just got to see them. And, Aniseya, she's like pretty pure of heart, it seems, aside from the part where she put somebody under like an evil spell and like threatened to
Melt his mind.
That's a little over the edge. But other than that, the like, my children deserve sweet treats. When the kids see her, they light up. They have this loving relationship there. Of course, there's the other mother that's maybe the antagonist. I love that. And they're doing their ritual. Like, I kind of do just want them to be able to do their thing. The witches of Dathomir or whatever. Like, I want to just like see your world. Like you're saying, there's these other people out there that are using the Force in their own way and they get oppressed. But man, I love seeing that. It would be nice to like, I hope that Star Wars continues to explore these witches, because like maybe that's a new thing that is turning some people off. If you're like, I just want to see lightsabers and stormtroopers and X-Wings and TIE fighters. Witches do kind of feel like a new thing, obviously in some of the animated content and in Ahsoka. Like a lot of parallels there when they were like lighting up that star beacon map thing with some of their ceremonies that we saw in this episode. And I think that's cool. Like that's another expansion that I'm here for. Also, the witches have great intonation. We'll cut that one.
Explain. Oh, when they're chanting. Is that
The
what you mean?
power of the many.
Yeah. I dug that. I mean, I can see it not working for some. The way I tend to think about this stuff is not that it did not exist until this moment. It's that these people, these cultures always existed in the Star Wars galaxy, and now we're seeing their story. It wasn't just always just the Jedi and Luke on Tatooine, and those were the only planets that existed. These other witches, these other people have always existed, and now we're getting to see things from their perspective and how they interact with the Force. We have the privilege of seeing outside of the scope of just the Jedi and their binary and how they use the Force and good and evil. And we're seeing these other people like these witches, like the witches of Dathomir, who don't necessarily side one way or the other. They just use this Force to live their lives. Don't even use it, just experience it. I love that they call it a thread, that they're pulling on the thread. I also love, this is just a quick little aside, a cool thing. I mean, it also happens with the Witches of Dathomir, but there's a literal physical mark that this gives you when it like touches you or you get infused with it or embodied with it. When you do this ascension in this coven of witches, you get a physical mark, which is just like the Force has touched you in a way to such a degree that you get a physical mark on your body. That's just so cool to me. I love the Force lore. I think, a lot of this is because I'm just like an expansive lore person and I want to know more. I want to see more. I want to experience more. I don't just want things from the Jedi's perspective, especially these Jedi or the prequel Jedi, because I don't think they're that great. Branching out, getting to see more stuff, I think it's good for everybody. And it expands this world that I just love so much.
It's really interesting that you're saying like, they're not even giving us the answers to this. We're just staying in this gray space, right? We know that these alternate cultures are here and they don't agree. And that is such a wonderful parallel with our own reality that maybe we could try to learn from this, but that the show does not purport to say, here is the answer, unless you blindly side with either or, whether you're with the witches or whether you're with the Jedi. And so it's really interesting that like they don't actually tell you. And you have to figure it out for yourself. It's exactly what Aniseya says to Osha. You can't let fear make these decisions for you. You've got to make the decision. This is a reoccurring theme, though, that like, how do you apply this, your point of view, to the world and how do you fit in? I need someone to show me my place in all of this. I really love that being one of the through lines that we're exploring in Star Wars constantly, even though it is really complex. And we would love to have a clear-cut answer, but it's so much more interesting the way the show presents it that we can even interpret it on our own here.
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting to think about within this world, within this era, the High Republic Jedi, like we talked about last episode, each Jedi sees the Force in a different way, whether it's an ocean or a river or a fire or a tree, and that's all accepted. And they each have their own individual connection and individual attachment to the Force, and that's all okay. But if you go outside of the Jedi Order, the Jedi are not okay with it. If you see the Force in a certain way. And again, we don't have the answers. The witches might be evil. I don't know, right? The Jedi might have been tracking them here, and Indara lied to them when they first met. We just don't have the answers. We're seeing the chinks in the Jedi armor here as time goes on.
We just don't have the answers. Thank you for listening to Krypton to Alderaan.
We could tell you one thing for sure, and that's the runtime.
Yeah, so we got this one flashback episode, and maybe we'll get another in the future. It would be interesting if the next one is another flashback. I think that might be kind of a weird trajectory, but like maybe we're going to Kofar, because that's where we thought we might have been going this week to meet up with Kelnacca in the woods, the Wookiee in the woods. We're only going there because May is, targeting Kelnacca, and our main cast knows, so they want to follow up. They might get derailed towards Coruscant, though. Man, this could get derailed next week if we just sit in a Jedi Council meeting, but that would be on brand for the Jedi. We have to go to that forest, obviously, and see what happens there. And so presumably, we're going to maybe see a fight with Kelnacca. I'm wondering, what's the next fight look like? Is Osha going to step in and stop her? Because Osha seems to be really smitten with Kelnacca in these flashback episodes. They have maybe a little bit of a connection there. Osha has said so much that she wants to join the Jedi. I have faith in the Jedi. She says that even after she's left the Jedi Order. So I don't know if there's something there once we get to Kofar. What do you think is going to happen? Is there any speculation with you?
Ooh, speculation, left field theory time. Yeah, I want to know how much May knows. Not even older May, but younger May. When she and Osha meet on the bridge at the end and she falls and Osha gets saved, has she seen something? She said Mama's dead, which Osha thinks is from the fire that May set. But then Osha says, what did you do? And May says, what did you do? I just wonder if there's something here where May has seen the Jedi or seen something happen. We know that the fire did not kill the witches because they're laying there on the floor, not burnt up. So something happened, and I want to know what May saw. And again, that might put us a little bit more on her side, or at least a little bit less on the Jedi's side. I don't think it's a mistake that we've seen Kelnacca working with the technologies and that their power generator may have been sabotaged. But we might have to go back to Coruscant. I don't know if I would necessarily rule out another flashback because we got 2 in the present day. And then if we get 2 in the flashback day, I think that would like make sense narratively.
Poetry.
Yes, poetry. I kind of would love for Soul to take a little bit of maybe like half initiative here and send Jecki and Yord. If he has to go back to Coruscant, send Jecki and Yord to Kofar. Yord is a knight. He's passed his trials. Jecki's the Padawan, but she can also like keep Yord in check because she's much more real world than he is. And they can just go and maybe try to help solve that problem. May is out for blood. She has to kill one of them without a weapon. So are we going to see her try to do that with the Wookiee? That would be pretty intense, maybe. I guess maybe my answer is I don't think I care where the next episode goes. This mystery has me so hungry for answers. And every time we get a little like nugget of answer, we get so many more questions. And so I'm loving this like who done it, why done it, to pull something that we said last week. And so if we go back in time and see what those events from a different perspective, man, that's going to fill in some stuff. If we go to Kofar and see Kelnacca, I think we're still going to like fill in some stuff. We're still going to go with May and see her on this rampage and see how everyone else is dealing with and interacting that. So I'm just so excited to see where the rest of this season goes. We're in episode 3 and I'm really, really amped up. This show has got me so excited for Star Wars.
Dude, judging by how angry May was as an 8-year-old, I've yet to see. She keeps telling all these Jedi, attack me with all of your strength. She does seem pretty angry as an adult. I'm waiting to see the, let the hate flow through. I think she's already been holding back. Maybe we'll see her have a really insane fight with Kelnacca. That would be pretty dope. Kamir says, you had trouble with a sleeping monk. Good luck with the Wookiee. So that's some ripe foreshadowing.
Yep. That's so good. Oh, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Well, all right, listeners, we got to keep this conversation going. We would love to hear from you. Give us all of your questions that have been yet to be answered down in the comments. And make sure to subscribe and help us get to the 1,000 subscriber mark. I know we've been saying we're so close, but we're really so close. It could be you that tips the scales. We appreciate you joining us for the journey. And make sure to tune in next week for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly the Acolyte. We've got a couple weeks to go. Thank you for listening to the show today. I've been Royce.
I've been Trobin.
And we've been Krypton to Alderaan.